Hi, I'm Tom Brookshire.
And I'm Pat Summerall. Last week we talked about how the new rules have changed the game. And this week, we'll see the first example of another new rule, Tom.
Pat, that'd be that Pittsburgh-Denver game. That's the first regular season sudden death game in NFL history. And despite 15 minutes of sudden death play, it still ended in a 35-35 tie. Really a great game.
It sure was. That's probably the biggest story of the week. But there are lots of other big stories. And we'll be showing you, like Miami's victory over Buffalo and New England's victory over the New York Giants.
Gosh, 2 weeks ago, not too many people, including us, would have picked the New England Patriots as the only 2-0 team in the AFC.
We didn't predict that, did we?
We may be able to go back and predict it now, huh?
We'll be right back with This Week in the NFL after this message.
2 weeks ago, the Miami Dolphins were soundly whipped by the Patriots, and last week everyone expected them to really explode on the Bills in retaliation. Instead, though, the Dolphins once again were in for a tough struggle, looking like something less than two-time world champions.
With number 22, Eugene Mercury Morris, back in the lineup after missing opening day, the Miami Dolphins expected to return to their Olympian heights. But the Blue Mountain Mercury tried to scale proved a tough match, and the swift one ended up flat on his back. Then, while the Buffalo walked all over a dolphin effigy, Mercury, in returning to the huddle, ended up flat on his front. The shaking up was only temporary, though, and after a short departure, Mr. Morris would return. Meanwhile, his Buffalo counterpart, O.J. Simpson, was running beautifully, but carrying poorly. Luckily, number 27, Ahmad Rashad, covered for O.J., and the home team garnered 7 anyway. Another Buffalo bright spot was the improved passing of number 12, Joe Ferguson, who hit J.D. Hill in the end zone for another Bills score. For the second week in a row, the Dolphins were less than impressive, making uncharacteristic mental and physical miscues like this Mercury Morris fumble with alarming frequency. While the Dolphins stumbled and fumbled, so did the Bills, as the usually reliable O.J. squirted the ball loose as much in this game as he usually does in a season. O.J.'s mistake proved costly when Bob Greasy was able to fire the ball to number 88, Jim Mandich, who eluded a cleverly disguised Buffalo defender for the touchdown. Greasy continued to move his team in close and then popped short passes into the end zone. This one to number 80, Marv Fleming, put the Dolphins on top to stay. Then Mercury mountain climber Morris found an easier route over and threw the Bills to wrap up the Miami victory 24-16. And finally, the world champs looked like world champs.
Well, Pat, it's not often that Joe Namath is held under 100 yards passing for the day.
Last week, Tom, he didn't even reach 50, a fact that can be attributed to a howling rainstorm and also an improved Buffalo Bill defense.
Last week in Orchard Park, New York, the winds blew, at times gusting to 45 miles per hour, and then the rains came. But football is an outdoor game, so the show must go on regardless of the conditions. The elements affected everyone's performance, but one man suffered more than the rest. Joe Namath is one of the purest passers the game has ever known, but this day was not fit to prove it. At times, the swirling winds blew his passes away from wide open receivers. Other times, the saturated plastic turf made maneuvering impossible. From every angle, the storm negated Namath's greatness, turning tight spirals into fluttering prayers. The climatic conditions relegated Namath to handoffs as the Jets had to improvise for every yard. However, New York did muster enough of a ground game to set up 2 Bobby Howfield field goals and a 13-yard John Riggins TD slosh. The Buffalo Bills did not even pretend they could beat the elements. Number 12, Joe Ferguson, threw only 2 passes, both incomplete, then handed off to the Juice 31 times for 117 water-soaked yards. O.J. Simpson brought the ball close, and Ferguson went the last yard on a broken play that fooled the Jets more than the Bills. But the real hero of this damp day was O.J.'s blocking back, number 34, Jim Braxton. Braxton compliments Simpson perfectly, hammering away at the defensive midsection while setting up Simpson's slants and jabs. Braxton turned in the day's biggest play as he thundered 21 yards over the synthetic sponge to give Buffalo a 16-12 fourth quarter lead. The rest would be left to Joe Namath. With 2 minutes left in the game, Namath had failed on 15 straight passes. For the first time in his life, he faced a game without a completion. So, with 94 yards in front of him, he went back to the air. Namath's pass to David Knight was the first completion for either team. But 2 plays later, the Winds once again took the snap from number 12's Ariel, and number 20, Robert James, accepted the gift. The elements and the Bills had brought Joe Namath to earth as Buffalo persevered in the wind and rain for a 16-12 victory over the Jets and a 2-1 record in the suddenly wide-open AFC East.
A game between the Bills and the Packers would ordinarily be thought of as a clash between the gliding grace of O.J. Simpson and the gouging gallops of John Brockington and MacArthur Lane. Well, last week, as the game came to pass, the run was only a pop-gun pistol for both sides.
In Green Bay last week, the famous Packer colors were on display. Making foul weather gear necessary were ominous thunderclouds and the even more ominous Buffalo Bills. The high-pressure front had the Packers making early mistakes. One fumble was recovered by Buffalo's number 42, Neil Craig, who ran it in close to set it up for the Juice. But last week, the Juice got squeezed repeatedly and managed only 62 yards on 16 carries. Fortunately for them, the Bills are no longer a one-pronged attack, and quarterback Joe Ferguson found another route to the end zone on a 9-yard pass to number 27, Ahmad Rashad. Ferguson continued to cleave the cloudy skies for good yardage, hitting wide receiver J.D. Hill on this play. In close, Ferguson faked play action to Simpson, then went down the middle to tight end Paul Seymour, number 87. Three times, fullback Jim Braxton powered in from the 1-yard line as the Bills steadily increased their lead. Only once did their passing game cause Buffalo grief when on this play, number 28 Willie Buchanan intercepted and ran the steal back to set up a Green Bay threat. Quarterback Jerry Taggy went first to the air and hit number 81 Rich McGeorge. Then John Brockington sliced through on his only big gainer in a 56-yard afternoon. Finally, number 36 MacArthur Lane, who had a mere 44 yards for the day, slipped into the end zone to register the only Packer points in a 27-7 Buffalo victory. For Buffalo coach Lou Saban, it looks like another year of contention for his club. But for Green Bay coach Dan Devine, it looks like another year of contention of another sort with the town of Green Bay.
Last week, the floundering Baltimore Colts were up against the ever-improving Buffalo Bills. And despite the fact that the Colts were in their own corral, there was no way they could put a halter on their 5-game losing skid.
Yes, there are ways to stop O.J. Simpson, although some may seem drastic. But for a man like Colt head coach Joe Thomas, it was a case where a coach in search of his first victory will stop at nothing. Last week, though, Colt quarterback Bert Jones got real close to the stadium soil often enough to earn a degree in agriculture. On the other hand, his counterpart Joe Ferguson was having some problems of his own. Eventually, Mr. Jones pulled off a successful and well-executed bootleg to give the Colts a short-lived 7-3 lead. And the Colts, who hadn't had much of a ration of touchdowns, mixed in with their feed this year, reacted accordingly. And for the briefest of whiles last week, it looked like Baltimore was victory bound when number 25 Ray Oldham intercepted and made a nice lateral return, which set off another round of premature celebration. But then the Bills got down to business as number 42 Neil Craig intercepted and outraced a bevy of pursuers for a 55-yard 10-7 Buffalo lead. And oh, how the emotion took wing and flowed all day. And emotion wasn't the only thing, because howitzers notwithstanding, the juice was flowing too. O.J.'s day totaled 127 yards. But the clincher came on a Joe Ferguson bomb and spectacular catch by number 40 J.D. Hill. They'll be talking about that one in Buffalo for quite a while. Baltimore's Lydell Mitchell, number 26, added one more tally to the Colts side, but it wasn't enough to tip the score in their favor as Baltimore went down to defeat for the 5th time this season 27-14. Before last week, there was one undefeated team left in the AFC, Pat. That was the Cinderella Patriots of Chuck Fairbanks. They had 5 straight.
And last week, the Patriots traveled to Buffalo to renew their rivalry with the Bills, the team they hadn't beaten in their last 5 tries.
When the Patriots and Bills get together these days, it's a meeting between 2 of the NFL's finest young quarterbacks, Jim Plunkett and the NFL's current passing leader, Joe Ferguson. While passing is their specialty, they can also call on 2 of the league's most explosive runners, record breaker and again league-leading O.J. Simpson, and on a different level, number 42, the league-leading kick returner Mac Herron. But it was another runner who got the game off with a bang, Sam Cunningham, number 39. On the game's first play from scrimmage, Sam Cunningham went 75 yards. And after just 21 seconds of play, the Red Hot Patriots led 7-0. On Buffalo's first possession, Joe Ferguson concluded an excellent drive with a game-tying third down pass to tight end Paul Seymour, number 87. On Buffalo's next possession, Ferguson passed through the snowflakes, this time to O.J. Simpson, who found the end zone for the first time this season. O.J. not only recorded his first touchdown of the year, but his first pass receiving touchdown since the rookie year 1969. On New England's next series, behind good blocking by his young offensive lineman, like number 70 Leon Gray, Jim Plunkett tried to pass upfield to tight end Bob Windsor, but the ball passed just over his outstretched hand into the waiting arms of safety man Tony Green, number 43. Green's return to the New England 4 set up another Buffalo touchdown. And after 1 quarter, the Bills led 20-7. But then the Patriots got tough. Capping a drive which contained 6 first downs, Jim Plunkett pitched out to Sam Cunningham, whose straight arm helped him to another touchdown. Sam the Band, the AFC's leading scorer, led all ball carriers with 125 yards and 3 touchdowns. But Joe Ferguson brought the Bills right back with another big play to Paul Seymour. At the half, Buffalo led 27-14, and it stayed that way only until Spike Jones had to punt to Mac Herron, probably the mightiest mini-back since the heyday of Buddy Young. Herron's 48-yard return led to a touchdown, which closed the gap to 27-21. But in the 4th quarter, Joe Ferguson was knocking on the door again. This touchdown was disallowed, but a field goal gave the Bills a 9-point lead. New England scored again with 5 seconds left for a final score, 30-28. But this was a day for the lofty Patriots to fall. And as Chuck Fairbanks observed afterward, quote, "That blue-shirted outfit is one of the best teams in pro football." Well, last year, Pat, when you thought of the Buffalo Bills, O.J. Simpson had to jump into mind, right?
Well, things have changed a little bit this season, Tom, because in addition to O.J., the Bills now boast the NFL's top-rated passer in Joe Ferguson, and as the Chicago Bears found out last Sunday, the AFC's #1 defense.
The Bills got 3 points early as the juice flowed easily through Chicago's scattered interior line.
And when number 19, Gary Huff, finally got possession, the hungry tentacles of Buffalo's rush forced a turnover. Number 43, safety Tony Green was the interceptor, and Buffalo was in the goal position at the Chicago 13. From there, Joe Ferguson handed the ball to Larry Watkins, whose battering runs made it Bills 10, Chicago nothing. Watkins' TD was the day's final, however, as a penalty wiped out this 48-yarder to J.D. Hill. It was far from an explosive afternoon for either club, but when there was offensive excitement, it usually had something to do with number 32. But if it was a frustrating afternoon for Buffalo, it was downright gloomy for the Bears, as they could manage but 2 field goals against the Bills' defense. Standing out amongst the Bills' defenders was gargantuan defensive tackle Mike Kadish, whose stampeding rush put Huff on his duff more than once. In fact, it got so bad that poor Mr. Huff started wincing even at the sound of Kadish's presence, which was perfectly understandable, as Kadish displayed a combination of disdain for quarterbacks and almost ghoulish enthusiasm that makes for inspired defensive effort. And indeed, the Bills' 16-6 victory demonstrates that the Buffalo Bills have come a long way from being just a one-man show.
Last week in Foxborough, Massachusetts, 2 of the NFL's best young teams met for the second time in 3 weeks, Tom, and it was another barn burner for the lead in the AFC East.
Pat, in those 2 games between Buffalo and New England, no less than 115 points were scored, but when it was all over, the margin of difference after 2 full games was just 1 field goal.
The Bills had beaten the Patriots 6 times in a row and had the AFC's top defense, top passer, and top rusher. But the Patriots were number 1 in some things, too, such as defense against the rush. The Bills settled for 3 points on their first series, but the Patriots got 7 on their first series when Jim Plunkett found the little big man, Mac Herron, over the middle. Mac Herron is only 5'5", but he is the NFL leader in total offense. At Kansas State, Herron led the Big 8 in receiving with Lynn Dickey as his quarterback and Larry Brown as his blocking back. Last Sunday, working with Jim Plunkett and Sam Cunningham, Herron rolled up another 169 yards of total offense and 3 big touchdowns. Thanks to Herron's heroics, the Patriots led 14-6 early in the second quarter. But then league-leading passer Joe Ferguson retaliated. Ahmad Rashad's touchdown brought the Bills to within 2 at 14-12. But then Sam Cunningham cut loose for New England. Sam the Bam's 9th touchdown of the season had New England up 21-12. But Joe Ferguson again came right back, this time to J.D. Hill. And at the half, the Bills were again within 2 at 21-19. The real killers for Jim Plunkett and the Patriots were 3 costly interceptions. Dave Washington, a very speedy linebacker, put Buffalo ahead 26-21 early in the 3rd period, and it seemed that the big plays would go on forever. Jim Plunkett kept firing to 7 different receivers. Two of Plunkett's first-team receivers, Darrell Stingley and Bob Windsor, are now out for the year. Number 33, Reggie Rucker, is playing with a broken arm. But the Redcoats kept coming. And Mac Herron's third touchdown of the day made it New England 28, Buffalo 26 after 3 quarters. John Leipold's second long field goal again had Buffalo ahead in the 4th quarter. And then all the Bills had to do was hang on to the ball. New England's last chance came on 4th and 2 when the British rookie place kicker John Smith tried to win the game from 46 yards out. The kick had been partially blocked by a rookie tackle named Jeff Yates from, ironically enough, Boston College. The Bills had won their 6th straight this season, their 7th straight over the Patriots, and more important, were alone in first place in the incredibly competitive AFC East.
It used to be that every game the Houston Oilers won was considered an upset of near epic proportions. Well, last week they did it again, but don't be surprised if 1 week soon the Oilers are listed as favorites.
From the outset, it didn't appear to be the Buffalo's day to roam. But then the Oilers also seemed reluctant to execute in a winning manner. And number 12, George Amundsen's arm was loaded with blanks. Finally, however, the Bills' faulty play outlasted Houston's, and much of the blame must be carried by Buffalo's Joe Ferguson and the 6 interceptions he threw. This one helped start the Oiler gusher, and number 34, Willie Rogers, gave Houston an early lead on his 13-yard off-tackle jaunt to the end zone. Then Dan Pastorini went to the air with good success as number 23, Vic Washington, turned near disaster into a healthy gain. Pastorini to number 82, Mac Alston, up the Oiler lead to 14-0, and another stunner was in the making. A good punt return by Buffalo's second-year cornerback Donnie Walker, number 26, finally put the Bills on the right track, and 2 John Leipold field goals put them within striking distance. But throughout the afternoon, Joe Ferguson was having passing problems of one sort or another. There were times when he had to make long searches for wide-open receivers like number 89, Wallace Francis. Then there were times when he searched, fired long, and saw an easy touchdown to J.D. Hill, barely tipped away. And then there was the added frustration of a field that was inches too short. Finally, and most destructive to the Bills' plans, there were those ever-painful interceptions. This one picked off by number 22, Zeke Moore. But in the end, it was not Buffalo's ineptitude. Rather, it's Houston's steady and remarkable improvement that decided the game when Vic Washington sprinted in to make the final score 21-9. 3 in a row for the Oilers. And look out, NFL, because the one-time town pushover is carrying some new muscle.
When the Buffalo Bills traveled to sunny Miami last week, they were tied for the lead in the AFC East with the world champion Dolphins, but they were up against 2 very formidable streaks. First, the Bills had not beaten the Dolphins in their last 9 tries, and second, Miami had won an incredible 28 straight games home in the Orange Bowl.
In the early going, the punting game was predominant, as neither Miami nor Buffalo could score a point during the first 9 series of the game. But then things started to happen. First, a Bob Greasy pass intended for Paul Warfield was intercepted in the end zone by Tony Green, number 43. Tony Green ran 107 yards to the Miami end zone, but a defensive holding penalty nullified the play. And instead of Buffalo being ahead by 7, on the next play, Larry Zonka put Miami ahead by 7. With just 36 seconds left in the first half, Bob Greasy found Paul Warfield on a classic deep post pattern, and Miami led comfortably 14-0 at the half. For the day, Warfield caught just 4 passes, but those 4 passes were worth a very important 139 yards for the Dolphins. In the second half, the Bills' conference-leading defense decided to put more heat on quarterback Bob Greasy. Greasy found a way to turn the heat off, as play action on 3rd and 1 led to another long gainer to Paul Warfield. Warfield's 54-yarder set up another easy touchdown by Larry Zonka, and a 21-7 Miami lead after 3 quarters. But in the 4th quarter, strange things began to happen. Dave Washington's fumble return brought the Bills within a touchdown at 21-14. But Buffalo quarterback Joe Ferguson had to leave the game with knee contusions. Buffalo's future appeared shaky as the quarterbacking was turned over to a fellow named Gary Morangi, a rookie from Boston College who had never before thrown a pass in an official NFL game. J.D. Hill's spectacular catch turned Gary Morangi's first pro pass into a touchdown, and the score was tied at 21. But only until the next series, when an 81-yard Miami drive ended with Don Nottingham's easy romp into the end zone. Then, trailing 28-21, with time running out, it was again all up to number 17, Gary Morangi. On the drive, Morangi ran 3 times and completed 5 of 6 passes, including a touchdown to Bob Chandler. And suddenly, with less than a minute left to play, the game was again tied, this time at 28. With just 51 seconds left, Bob Greasy, from his own 19, looked for Paul Warfield on the deep out. Warfield's clutch catch had the Dolphins at midfield. A pass to Jim Kick gained another 12, and then Kick bounced outside for 15 more. With just 24 seconds left, the most important series of the season for both teams was about to culminate in one of the most amazing plays of the season. The offensive call, a draw play to Don Nottingham. The defensive call, safety blitz. It hasn't been a perfect season for Miami, but a perfect comeback and a perfect play gave the Dolphins undisputed first place for the first time this year. And who could blame the usually unflappable Dolphins for showing a little emotion for a change?
In order to keep their division title hopes alive, the Buffalo Bills had to beat the Cleveland Browns last Sunday. And amidst a cold, wet Cleveland afternoon, the Bills did just that.
From the opening kickoff, it wasn't hard to tell that it was simply going to be one of those days for the Cleveland Browns. Their luck continued when on their second series, the Browns mounted an incredible 25-play drive and managed only a field goal. Then Cleveland kicked off to number 89, Wallace Francis. And last year's AFC kickoff return leader brought it back 46 yards. As if the return by Francis wasn't enough, 2 plays later, O.J. Simpson did his thing from 41 yards out. The Browns' frustration had only just begun, though, as number 17, Brian Sipe, retreated to pass from his own end zone. Sipe was flopping like a fish out of water in his attempt to avoid the safety brought on by Bill defensive tackle Mike Kadish. But while the Browns' offense failed, the Buffalo passing attack fared little better. Only 1 pass completion and 7 attempts spell the story of the Bills' air game. But with a potent ground attack in O.J. Simpson and number 34, Jim Braxton, the pass just wasn't needed as badly on this Sunday. Buffalo added 2 field goals to lead 15-3, 3 times victimizing Brown quarterback Mike Phipps with the interception. The only time the Browns produced was within the final minutes of play as Mike Phipps finally began connecting with his own receivers. A Phipps to Ken Brown hookup with 8 seconds remaining made the score closer, but the Bills won it anyway, 15-10 over the rapidly fading Cleveland Browns.
Last week, they had some of that good old Buffalo winter weather in Orchard Park, where the Bills needed to win to guarantee a continued share of the lead in the AFC East. Huh?
That's right, Pat, and with snow before the game and the high winds dropping the temperature even lower, it wasn't a day made for offense. And so the Bills and the Colts went out and they didn't have much offense.
About the only player on either team who had any kind of good day was Colts second-year quarterback Burt Jones, whose darts pierced the winds for 170 yards. But the Buffalo defense made Jones pay for his day in the sun in the cold when they put him down 8 times for 70 yards and losses. For the Bills offense, only O.J. Simpson had anything to cheer about as he reached the 1,000-yard mark. But that, too, was hardly a great offensive performance, for it took him 24 carries to get the 63 yards he needed and left him exactly 999 yards short of last season's total. The rest of the Buffalo offense sputtered as they, like the Colts, were unable to reach the end zone. The Bills had only 1 good shot, but that was dropped by tight end Paul Seymour. Seymour, a tackle in college, has suspect hands to begin with. And while his gloves may have kept his hands warm, they didn't enhance their performance as the biting cold destroyed both teams' offenses, and 2 John Leipold field goals were the only points put on the board. The Colts managed 1 good shot at a touchdown, too, and Jones began to find Freddie Scott, a rookie from Amherst. Another fine catch by Scott had the Colts moving in the 4th quarter, and Baltimore had 4 cracks from the Buffalo 8-yard line to overcome the Bills' 6-point lead. But 4 cracks weren't enough as an inspired goal line stand boosted Buffalo to its 9th win of the year and warmed their fans, whose team kept its share of first place in the AFC East.
Despite weather conditions which favored the highly refined ground attack of the Buffalo Bills, the New York Jets set out to prove the theory that you can pass during a driving rainstorm while standing in 8 inches of mud.
Possessing a master's touch when spiraling a football, some consider Joe Namath the greatest pure passer in the game today. But sometimes Mother Nature's interference forces even an ace like Namath and his head coach Charlie Winter to redirect their game plans. And so, during the first half, both the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets squared off and butted heads in a running duel, a fight that in 30 minutes produced not a single point. Little had changed by the third quarter, though Buffalo had begun to roll. Defying Mother Nature, Joe Ferguson then stepped back and speared number 40, J.D. Hill, also known as Mr. Clean. Hill's catch and carry put the Bills up on top. But on their next possession, Buffalo fumbled, and Joe Namath wasted little time in retaliation. Rich Castor's reception still left the Jets short by 1 as the not-so-automatic point after was missed, leaving it 7-6. Buffalo then summoned a big play out of its special teams, and number 26, Donnie Walker, responded. A Buffalo field goal upped the visitors' lead to 10-6. But in the fourth quarter, Joe Namath gathered his troops and set out to capture win number 6 of the season. Jerome Barkham's brilliant catch of Namath's slippery pass put New York ahead for the first time in the afternoon, 13-10. But not to be outdone, Joe Ferguson rallied his crew and Buffalo mounted a threat. With number 32, O.J. Simpson, gaining good strides as a receiver, the Bills went to the well once too often and the Jets were waiting. Number 51, Ralph Baker, iced the victory cake by returning Joe Ferguson's pass 67 yards for the final Jet tally. Baker's run was greeted by an end-zone mob delirious over the fact that the Jets had just completed a 20-10 conquest of the playoff-bound Buffalo Bills.
Both the Rams and Bills finished up their season last week knowing they had a playoff berth cinch, Pat, and you have to maybe think their game may not have been a true test of their relative abilities.
Well, the only argument I have for that statement, Tom, is that I think most teams like to have a win under their belts prior to their first playoff game, so perhaps both the Bills and the Rams wanted last week's victory more than you'd imagine.
Only in Los Angeles would a fire hydrant come to the game disguised as a fluorescent frisbee. And the Buffalo Bills came in the guise of a playoff team, but didn't look like it. In fact, even O.J. got squeezed repeatedly by the Rams' crunching defense. And while Jack the Hacksaw Reynolds took a breather, he was exhorted on to even greater acts of disruption. But the Bills decided there was time for a little disruption of their own, and they kept the Harris-Jackson combo out of the end zone. Finally, O.J. Simpson found a novel way to fool the Rams' defense. His running pop-up was covered by number 27, Ahmad Rashad, and the Bills led 7-0. It wasn't until the third quarter that Harris found the range and began to connect with the likes of Lance Rensel, number 19. But once Harris got going, he got tough, hitting Rob Scribner to put the Rams up 7-6. Then, after another power drive, Harris rolled around in and made the score 13-7 And Ron Jaworski later added another one-yard score to make it 19-7. The Bills tried gamely to come back, and a big play from Joe Ferguson to J.D. Hill accounted for 55 yards and another Buffalo touchdown. But the Easterners fell short 19-14. And thanks to the Rams' fine 10-4 season, the Coliseum Seagulls will get at least another week's diet of half-eaten hot dogs.
Well, last Sunday in Pittsburgh, Al, the Steelers looked about as good as I've ever seen them, I think.
Well, they certainly did, Tom, and I believe the reason for that awesomeness is the newly found confidence and cool that Terry Bradshaw has at quarterback.
Well, Terry certainly had one of the best games of his career, and I believe he has become a better all-around leader on the field, too, where he wasn't at one time.
Well, that's a quality that forced the Buffalo Bills to close out their season 2 weeks short of their avowed goal.
'Twas the day of the playoffs in Pittsburgh, PA, a time for the Bills to get down and pray. For the steel curtain was hung by the fans with great care in hopes that Greenwood, Holmes green and white, might cause the Bills to wish they weren't there. But the Bills were there, and surprisingly enough on this day, it was the Pittsburgh attack that shone as Mel Blount returned the opening kickoff 42 yards to put the Steelers in good position right away. Terry Bradshaw exuded newfound poise and calm to go along with his great strength, and the Steelers capped their first possession with a Roy Gerela field goal. Undaunted by the steel curtain, Joe Ferguson, number 12, brought Buffalo right back when he hit tight end Paul Seymour for a 22-yard score. A repeat shows that the pass was perfectly thrown, but Seymour's size and strength were a positive factor in his reaching the goal line. However, the 7-3 Buffalo lead was not to last long. Mixing his plays well and taking much upon himself, Bradshaw could not be stopped except by his own teammates, in this case, number 50, Jim Clack. Despite such miscues, Bradshaw remained imperturbable, and early in the second quarter, with a day and a half to throw, he struck 27 yards through the air to number 20, Rocky Bleier. The Steelers were never headed. Thanks again to a repeat, we see Bradshaw first faking a handoff to Bleier, who then circles downfield to arrive in a wide-open rendezvous with the ball. The next time Pittsburgh had the ball, Bradshaw sent number 88, Lynn Swan, winging around in for a 25-yard pickup. Later in the drive, Swan almost took it in on this flat pass, which he high-stepped to the 1-yard line. Franco Harris finished the job by bullying in to put the Steelers on top 16-7. While the gold and black offense was whooping it up, the defense in the person of number 59 Jack Ham was swooping down on the juice, and O.J. was squeezed repeatedly. But when O.J. was stopped, number 34 Jim Braxton stepped in and ripped off a beautiful 30-yard gain. However, the run's effect was somewhat ruined by a fumble at the end, which Pittsburgh recovered. For the Bills, it was a time for eyes to glint pain and worry, because another Steelers score at this juncture could mean curtains. And curtains it was to be, as Bradshaw could perform no wrong. When his passes were off, his receivers made great catches, as Rocky Bleier did here. Like a dreadnought, the steel machine continued to roll and fly. Bradshaw was pinpoint perfect, and Lynn Swan's diving catch left the Steelers with only 4 yards to grind. Franco Harris polished those 4 yards off in a hurry to make the score 22-7. The Buffalo team's disgust was evident in their helpless complaining, and they obviously needed regrouping. But their first half torment was not to be eased, because once again Bradshaw had his offense looking goalward. In the first half alone, Bradshaw completed 10 of 14 for 166 yards, and this one was the shot that brought the Buffalo down. A beautiful pass and a leaping catch by number 87 Larry Brown put the Bills at the cliff's edge of defeat. The same play from another angle points up the Steelers' perfect timing and the helplessness to stop it that the Bills must have been feeling. For the third time in the first half, Franco Harris powered in to make the score 29-7. Along with good old Santa Chimp, the rest of the uproarious Steeler crowd realized that the second half would be a mere formality. The Bills started the third quarter with a renewed vigor on defense and allowed the black and gold none of their former explosiveness. On offense, Buffalo perked to life only momentarily, as Joe Ferguson led them on a well-conceived scoring drive that started with this strike to J.D. Hill. O.J. chipped in with his biggest play of the day, and for one of the few times all afternoon, his gliding, sliding style was allowed to flow. Ferguson to J.D. Hill again, put the Bills within sight of a score. Then a 7-yard slant by O.J. brought them to within sniffing distance. And finally, it was Ferguson to O.J. again, and the Juice had the singular honor of making the score 29-14. A repeat of the play shows O.J. scoring what turned out to be the last points of the Buffalo Bills season. But Bradshaw and his assassins were still not satisfied. And again, Terry drove them downfield where Roy Girella popped another field goal. When in the final seconds, Joe Gillum replaced Terry, he too almost brought the Steelers in for a score. This run by Steve Davis, number 35, fell just inches short despite appearances. But the Pittsburgh Steelers showed up short nowhere at all last Sunday as they ousted the Bills from the playoffs 32-14. For the Bills, it was a disappointing ending to a good season, and they should remember that only one team will end its season without disappointment. Besides that, at least they've avoided the disagreeable job of having to cope with the Oakland Raiders in the boisterous Oakland Coliseum. But on the basis of last Sunday, one would say the Steelers look ready for anything.